Good morning, everybody. We'll give it just a second for everybody to get hooked up to the audio and get into the Zoom meeting, and then we'll go ahead and kick things off here in just about a minute. Thanks so much for your time. We will go ahead and get started, everybody. Good morning from Columbus. Thanks so much to our statewide media for joining the Ohio Democratic Party on this morning's press call. I'm Press Secretary Cameron Kier. It's very nice to see so many of you here this morning and interested in this really important topic. This morning, Ohio Democrats are announcing the next steps in the ongoing battle with Mike DeWine and his administration to secure answers about the largest public corruption scandal in state history. Today, Chair Liz Walters is with us to announce legal action against the governor over public records requests filed by ODP. Simply put, enough is enough, and Ohioans deserve answers. Joining the chair this morning, Attorney General candidate Representative Jeff Crossman, Auditor candidate Taylor Sappington. They're going to discuss some of the limited information DeWine has already released to date and why many questions still remain about these records. After these remarks, we'll certainly leave some time for questions. I'm sure you'll have a few. In the meantime, if everybody wouldn't mind just keeping those microphones muted, that always helps us out a lot. It's now my pleasure to introduce Ohio Democratic Party Chair Liz Walters.
Thanks, Cameron, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. It's been an incredibly busy week, as I don't have to tell all of you. We were so thrilled to move through the primary with such resounding support for our nominees. But with so much going on lately, it's easy to forget that Ohio finds itself amid the largest public corruption scandal in state history. And it's a scandal that's using $287,000 in taxpayer money every single day to help bail out a coal plant in Indiana. Recently, we took a tour around the state to outline the price Ohioans are paying for ongoing corruption. At a time when too many Ohioans are worried about making ends meet, working families in our state are shelling out billions. Yes, that's billions with a B of dollars every year and every day for Republican corruption. The Ohioans we met with were mad. They were tired of footing the bill for bribery, corruption, and incompetence, and they wanted answers, and so do we. That's why last year we filed multiple public records requests to get Mike DeWine to finally answer what he knew and when about the $60 million bribery scheme, a scheme that he's more closely connected to every day. Those requests went unanswered. We tried again in January, and facing public pressure, DeWine released redacted documents that didn't follow the law and refused to release the rest. We're not going to let DeWine stonewall his way out of responsibility for this scandal. So today we're filing a suit in the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas to get answers. First, we're suing for Mike DeWine's full unredacted calendar. We know that DeWine met with Mike Dowling and Chuck Jones, the two men named as ordering the first energy bribes. Now he's trying to hide behind illegal redactions so we don't see who else he's meeting with. But that's not all. We believe the other records rejected by DeWine were done so illegally. So today we're resubmitting those records. If his administration continues to reject these records, we're prepared to sue for those too. Ohioans are looking for justice, and we will work to get it for them however we can. We're also offering a better way forward. Jeff and Taylor will talk more in a minute about the contrast between their campaigns and their opponents, but Democrats are committed to rooting out corruption that is costing Ohioans every day. Nan Whaley has released an anti-corruption plan that will tackle the cost of Mike DeWine's State House corruption head on, and we're ready to draw the contrast between her efforts to fight for working families and DeWine's record of shilling out for the wealthy and well-connected. Nan, along with Jeff and Taylor and the rest of our statewide candidates, are ready to put Ohio workers first, put money in the pockets of working families rather than take it out to pay for GOP corruption tax. I'll stop there and turn things over to our next Attorney General, Representative Jeff Crossman.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Let me say that I applaud the effort of the ODP in filing a lawsuit to ensure that the public gets to see the records we've all been demanding for months. And I want to take you all back to before I ever even decided to run for Attorney General, before it was even on my radar, I had been asking and demanding information from the governor's office and the PUCO about the extent of their involvement. We deserve to know what did Mike DeWine know and when did he know it? We deserve to know how involved Mike DeWine and First Energy were in crafting House Bill 6. How much did they know about the corruption? What did Mike Dowling tell Mike DeWine his plans in terms of passing House Bill 6? We deserve that information. Ohioans deserve that information. We have been demanding that information long before anyone had any elections on their mind. Ohioans deserve it because it's costing them money. Chair Walters referred to the $287,000 every single day. We're approaching $300 million in this state. Money's expended to fund 2 outdated power plants along the Ohio River. One, of course, is in Madison, Indiana. I know that it doesn't serve Ohio. I know that because Representative Weinstein and I visited that coal plant back in September of last year. And we've been asking for documents long before that. And we held a press conference in September of last year demanding records. We've still not received the full scope of what we've requested. And, we're going to demand and hold these folks accountable. Nobody is above the law. Nobody, not the governor, not PUCO, not Sam Randazzo. We all deserve to learn about this scandal and how close it becomes to Mike DeWine and his inner circle. Yet, Mike DeWine believes he can simply no comment his way out of the largest public corruption scandal in Ohio history. And then you have, the Keith Faber and Dave Yost, who simply are not doing their jobs. They're simply not doing their jobs, and they're failing Ohio. They're turning a blind eye to the largest public corruption scandal in the state's history. It's unfathomable to me. And when I talk to voters and when I talk to Ohioans, they cannot fathom how people in a position to do something are doing nothing. And it's not going to happen on our watch. I can tell you that. Ohioans deserve answers. They want answers. Ohioans want to know why they're continuing to pay for this stuff. And they want to know why their leadership is failing them. We will not fail them. We intend to get to the bottom of this. And that's why I applaud this lawsuit today. There may be more to come. I've also been requesting records out of the PUCO and Governor DeWine's office without success. They think that they can placate us with just a smattering of documents. And I know you all here in the media have faced similar obstacles, but we are filing suit to make sure we get to the bottom of this. As we get more records from Mike DeWine and his cronies, we'll be posting them on my website, and I believe the next auditor of the state of Ohio, Taylor Sappington, will be doing the same, because we know we want the people to have this information. We know that sunlight's the best disinfectant against corruption. And for too long, we've seen scandal after scandal. For the last 20 some years, we've seen scandal after scandal in succeeding Republican administrations. And the people are tired of it. They're tired of it. They expect their elected officials to do the job of the people. They want accountability, and that's what we're fighting for. And we're going to fight in court if we have to. And that's what this lawsuit's about. We also just need new leadership in this state. Leadership that's ready to take our state in a new direction and really fight for the people of Ohio, for a climate that actually creates good paying jobs for the people of Ohio and doesn't take money out of their pockets, but actually puts money in their pockets. That's why people like Nan Whaley, our next governor, Taylor, myself, and the rest of the Democratic slate for statewide office, it's really important that we get new leadership in the state to provide some much needed balance and leadership in this state to finally end these GOP corruption scandals. So we're working to put families first. That's the contrast here. And we're working for accountability, and we plan to create jobs, invest in working families, and put money in people's pockets. So let's make one thing clear. Working Ohioans can't afford 4 more years of Mike DeWine and his leadership and the rest of the Republican leadership. We can't afford to have an attorney general that simply covers up crimes rather than actually fights to investigate them. And I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to turn over to our next auditor, Taylor Sappington. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. I just want to make sure you guys can hear me. I've been having an internet issue since we started. All good?
Yep, you're fine,
Okay,
Taylor.
perfect.
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So, hey, everybody, I think I'm running for Ohio Auditor because I believe everyone here in Ohio deserves someone fighting for them every single day and fighting to hold state government accountable and holding leadership accountable. Folks deserve an auditor who will balance the books and catch the crooks. And that's exactly what I plan to do. And it's exactly what I did in my hometown of Nelsonville on day one. So when I became city auditor, Nelsonville was teetering on financial disaster. Books were in the red, deficits were killing jobs, and the city was suffering under all of this and not growing. So on day one, quite frankly, I know a thing or two about missing records, redacted records, and how they impact government and how they impact how we do this thing called, public service. And that's because I found on day one missing and changed and altered financial records, missing emails that were illegally wiped. And I immediately launched an investigation into what would become the city's biggest theft and fraud bust in the city's history. And quite frankly, that bust took place just under 8 weeks on the job. This administration, the state auditor, and the attorney general and others under that same timeline could have taken on this public corruption scandal twice, just this year alone, and ended it. That's just this year. They've been in office now for several years. So today in Nelsonville, we're in the black. We have $1 million surplus. The community grows stronger, and we have the resources to invest back in our city now that it's not being siphoned away by corruption and what we call the corruption tax. So while we've had the largest public corruption scandal in state history, we're not just getting crickets from Mike DeWine, Keith Faber, and the rest of statewide Republicans, but they're actively trying to make this go away and move on from it. That's what they'd like everybody to do, is move on and forget it. To me, that's unacceptable. The job of the state auditor is not only to catch misspending and misdeeds, but to actually do something about it. And so that's exactly what we're doing here today. We're trying to do something about it because there's few and far between examples of what has actually been done by this administration. There's been lots of excuses, a lot of no comments, and a lot of let's move on, but that's not good enough. Something needs to be done about this. And quite frankly, the last thing that we should all be asking folks across Ohio to do is to keep paying for this, to keep paying for corruption, to keep paying for this on their electric bills. It puts our folks farther behind, and all it does is use our money for corrupt deals instead of giving opportunity to our families and to our workers. So today, Mr. Crossman, Nan, and I, and fellow Democrats are pushing a better path forward. We're not just promoting accountability and transparency, we're actually acting on it, doing something about it. Two things, accountability and transparency have been missing for too long. We're sharing these records we've secured. We're holding those in power to account for these misdeeds and corruptions, and we're not going to stop now. So only once these folks face accountability will they start to do their jobs. And if not, we're happy to take their jobs and do it right for them and for Ohio. Starting today, Republicans, distractions, no commenting, sidestepping, let's all move on. That's over. We're here to get the answers that we deserve, Ohio deserves, the taxpayer deserves. And with that, I believe we're opening up to questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. And thank you, Jeff, for joining this morning. I want to address a question in the chat real quick from Alex. I think you're with Bloomberg. Listen, the question here is, why won't Mike DeWine submit to a public record standard that he is obligated to by law? I think the real question is, what are they hiding? And that is what we are trying to get accountability for. Sending a redacted calendar as the governor of Ohio is absolutely beyond the pale. You are accountable to the people for what you do with your time. And so until we get clear, real, true public records disclosure from the governor's office, we're not going to stop the work to do that accountability for Ohio voters. And if there's nothing to hide on HB6, I don't know why on earth you would send a redacted calendar out.
If I may add, last year when I did a press conference and tried to put some pressure on the DeWine administration to provide even a smattering of documents, they gave me 8 pages of documents the night before the press conference, because after I'd called the press conference, they finally gave me some records. I had asked for a litany of things, text messages included. I've received to date no text messages from the governor's office. I've gotten emails back which were exchanged to and from Sam Randazzo that were heavily and fully redacted without knowing who those were received from, what the content of the message was. And the lawsuit is the vehicle, putting my attorney hat on here, the lawsuit is the vehicle to secure some accountability with the public records law. We're going to ensure through the filing of this lawsuit that we put them to their proof that they've actually submitted all the documentation that they have in their files, and that they do the diligence to search for the records that we're requesting. And we don't know what we're going to file. We know that there's information there. We know that because we've seen the drips and drabs of information that have come out. Thank goodness for the OCC, the Office of Consumer Counsel has been doing very diligent work trying to get records from First Energy and from the PUCO and from the governor's office. And every time they get more information, they release it to the public, and we see that there's something inflammatory there. So, I can point to most recently, we found out that that the administrative law judge overseeing these so-called investigations at the PUCO about the House Bill 6 scandal, he himself was involved in the drafting of the legislation. So I don't know, that which is crazy that I had asked back last August for the PUCO chair to conduct a full and open investigation into what happened during his tenure. Sam Randazzo, of course, was appointed by Mike DeWine, knowing that he had significant ties to the utility industry. The PUCO chair refuses to do an independent investigation and publish the results to the public. So the public needs this information. They need to have answers about why they continue to pay on their electric bill every single month for charges that have nothing to do with the use of their electricity. And as one Ohioan told me not too long ago, I guess it's easier to steal a little bit of money from a lot of people in Ohio than it is to just rob a bank.
Any other questions from reporters this morning?
We've got Laura Bischoff with a question, was the next one in the chat.
Yeah, good morning. So, redactions are allowed if there's a doctor's appointment or a grandkid's graduation or whatever. It doesn't document the official work of the office. How many, what volume of redactions are we talking about that rise above the normal redactions? And also, why file in Franklin County Common Pleas? Why not Court of Claims or Supreme Court?
Second question first. I will say I'm not a lawyer. Our lawyer is here to answer that question, so I don't get myself in any trouble. Scott, you want to answer that question real quick?
Sure. On the second question, as far as why we filed, and thank you for the question. Thanks everybody for being here. On the second question, as far as why we filed in the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas, it's the best place to start. You can file these in Court of Claims or Common Pleas or the Ohio Supreme Court, and it seemed like a better idea to file it at the trial court level, so they could do an in-camera review on the documents themselves to make a decision on whether those should have been protected by an exemption or not.
And Laura, to your first question, I think the central legal issue here is that the records are so redacted that potentially important and relevant details are just completely missing. We understand that there is redaction allowed. We don't believe that what they have sent us, it fits within that norm, right? That there is so much, we know that DeWine met with Chuck Jones and Mike Dowling, and those dates are so redacted, we can't even know when that meeting would have occurred.
So the in-camera review that Attorney Hubey is referring to is if there's a dispute about the propriety of the redaction, the trial court judge could review those records and determine whether or not they are properly redacted or that information needs to be disclosed to the public as we've requested. So it gives us some tools here for accountability.
Laura, did you have a follow-up?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a question for Liz or for Mr. Crossman, but could you walk us through what it is you're refiling your request for with the governor's office and what you are filing the lawsuit on? Are these the same things or are they two different things? What is the question that's being asked?
So we're refiling requests for additional public records that were never released, right? We've made several requests going back into last year that were just ignored after we announced via a press conference in January that we would sue if they didn't give records. We did get a batch of records from the DeWine administration. So there's two things. We think that the records we got were improperly redacted and very incomplete, and then they never answered other parts of the public records request. So the lawsuit today is about the records we do, about the redacting the records we do have, and we are sending a follow-up request for the records they still have not disclosed after we've asked for them multiple times. So we're doing two things at once. It's a both and.
And Jim, to be clear, I am not a party to this lawsuit that the ODP is filing. I have my own potential independent cause of action that I may bring later. But I do support the effort to get information from the governor's office. The public deserves the information, and we're just not getting that. Look, the Attorney General, the office is an important and powerful office. Could be conducting an investigation of its own, failed and refuses to do that. That to me, it suggests that they're complicit in covering up these issues. And, we deserve better in Ohio. We can't cover up crimes. We deserve better government than this. And so I applaud the effort to get to the bottom of this scandal and to find out the full breadth, how broad it goes and how deep it goes. And, what the extent of First Energy's and the other big utilities involvement is in running our state government.
And Jim, for your reporting, we will, in the follow-up, we're sharing our public, all those documents with all of you. So you can have the full context of both the lawsuit and the requests.
And just to make sure that I'm clear here, you are asking for essentially the same thing, but you're using two different mechanisms to get there.
Sort of like there was a part of the first public records request that they just never answered, right? That they didn't submit records for. And so we're going back again to give more clarity and hopes that actually makes them responsive. But the lawsuit encompasses a couple parts of this that are unique to the records they already did give us, if that makes sense. So it's both and.
I can answer at this point specifically to the public records requests, to Chairwoman's point, are a lot more specific about what it is that we're asking for, so that the state has a very clear direction on exactly what it is that they need to send us. We don't anticipate that they're going to send us anything, and at which point we may add counts to this lawsuit. On the lawsuit, we're asking specifically for them to get us the unredacted calendar, because we asked for that. It was a clear ask. They responded with something that was almost completely redacted. They didn't give good answers as far as why the redactions were there. There were just blanket exemptions applied to it. So we just really need to know more, and we need to know what they're hiding.
Thank you all. I've seen a couple of questions pop in the chat and kind of bouncing back off the question about the exact documents. Those will be sent out in a post-event release. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we will have a copy of the suit, and then you'll be able to view those documents. The requested documents we've gotten back are currently live on Rep. Crossman and Taylor Sappington's websites right now. So those are out there. Tom Bosco has our next question.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Just kind of predicting what the other side might say when they hear all of this, and when I go for some reaction, I anticipate they're going to kind of blow this off and say this is just an attempt by innuendo to connect them to the House Bill 6 scandal. I mean, is this just a campaign stunt? How will you answer that criticism?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I don't think accountability for the largest corruption scandal in state history is a campaign stunt. It is what Ohio voters deserve, full stop. And what is baffling to me is that as we get into a general election season where they have had every opportunity to disclose, be transparent, and frankly, clean up the corruption they've caused, nothing has happened. They can repeal HB6. They haven't done that. They've taken literally no action except to stonewall, ignore, deny, and blow smoke. And so at this point, the work for accountability can't be given up just because they think it's inconvenient or want to ignore it. So I think that from our perspective, we've been working on a timeline, trying to follow the law, be good actors in this space. We're being completely transparent with everyone about what we've gotten. It's why we're disclosing everything from the documents in the lawsuit to the public records we have gotten to this point. We're not going to waste time. It's not a waste of time to hold DeWine accountable for Ohio voters. It's all on them here.
If I just jump in here too, look, accountability doesn't have an expiration date. Just because we moved into the calendar year 2020 doesn't mean we should stop asking questions. And these are questions, Tom, that we've been asking before this election stuff. This is what I talked about when I first started talking. You know, I've been asking for records for months, well prior to any decision to run for additional office here. So, you know, I kind of honestly resent the implication that this is some sort of a stunt. The people deserve answers here. They deserve answers and they don't have them. And I know you all have been asking questions too, and yet you haven't been receiving all the documents you've requested. So, you know, like I said, we're going to continue to push, no matter, you know, how close to the election we get. We still think that people deserve the information that's important for them to decide when they do vote, because that's the only way they're going to be able to hold folks accountable is at the ballot box this year.
I think that's right. I think then the last thing I would just kind of tack on to the end of that is, you know, sadly, this is just another example in a long line of ways that DeWine has been wasting taxpayer money, right? Whether it's failing to engage in a meaningful redistricting process and forcing the state to hold 2 primaries, hiring independent map makers that nobody listens to, you know, wasting millions of dollars in the Medicaid program. Like, all they have to do is disclose the public records, which they're obligated to do under the law. Everything else is a waste of taxpayer time and money.
One thing I had suggested months ago, by the way, last August, was just for the DeWine administration to set up a website and provide all the documents, you know, give the public confidence that their government isn't on the take. You know, provide all the documents, be upfront. That's what I was asking when I met with Jennifer French, the head of the PUCO now. I met with her last, you know, this wasn't public. I met with her and I said, you know, your obligation is to be transparent with the public, because what went on here? Sam Randazzo was bribed with $4 million. Sam Randazzo was appointed by Mike DeWine. Sam Randazzo was helping author, as was his staff, helping author a bill that was secured through bribery. So we, as the public, demand answers, are deserving of answers, and these folks that are in these offices should be fully transparent, not partially transparent, not giving you know, dribs and drabs of documents in response to public requests. They should simply come clean, put up a website, download the documents to the website so that everybody can see what's out there and what transpired. Be fully transparent here so that people can have confidence that their government's actually working for them. They don't have that now. And they won't have that while these folks are still in office, unless they actually come clean.
I want to add in there too that I think you know, to me it seems like a cynical question, right? Not the question asked, but a cynical notion to say so we don't have anything from them. So what? You know, when I ran for city auditor, we didn't run on we're going to bust up theft because it wasn't known, right? It wasn't known yet, right? So we jumped in there, did our jobs, and had that bust available within 8 weeks, okay, of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so if you ask the same question at the state level, what has been done by any of the state executive office holders on this public corruption scandal? And quite frankly, I think it's a short list. And I don't think I'm the only one that thinks that. I think a lot of folks here think that. And I think Jeff makes a good point, and Liz, that many of you have asked some of the same questions. And just because they've gotten away with it for so long, asking everyone to just move on, it's a new election time. That's not good enough, and that's not acceptable. And I just add, you know, I want to build on Rep. Crossman's point about the transparency should be expected, not requested. At City Hall, we now have all financial transactions online. And there's a certain risk to that because we pay for things sometimes that are private, and we do have to make sure that we don't do things that releases certain types of information like protected medical status. But guess what? We still have the information available for the taxpayer to understand that costs them. That even if it was a medical expense for an employee due to an injury at the job, it still costs them something, even if it protects the individual's information and protected information. So I just want to add that, yeah, I think Mike DeWine wants everybody to say, so what, we redacted some of the calendar. Well, to me, it should be the expectation that the calendar should just be generally available, and that the expectation shouldn't be a bunch of redactions. So I think it's important that we understand that the expectations that the governor wants here clearly is not what is expected of public servants, which it should just be transparency on its face.
Really good answers here to a couple of good questions. Paul Teasley from Hannah News has a question next for us, Paul.
Yeah, thanks. You referred to scandals in succeeding Republican administrations over the past 20 years. What specifically are you referring to in the 8 years of the Kasich administration? And kind of a second, maybe related question, are you still including tax credits or tax expenditures in your definition of public corruption? Two questions.
Well, I could address part of that question. I'm not sure I understand the last part of your question there. And I'll give you a chance to maybe rephrase that in a second. But look, starting back in the Taft administration, we had CoinGate, which was pocket change compared to what we're talking about here, right? Millions of dollars versus hundreds of millions of dollars. The only governor in the state's history that's been indicted on and convicted of a public corruption related offense. Then you have, the ECOT scandal, which was, charter schools lying to the public, lying to the state of Ohio, stealing millions of dollars. They fully haven't refunded the state yet. That cost our schools money, that cost taxpayers money. And, there has been really very little accountability there. No one has gone to prison over that as far as I can recall. And then you have payday lending issues that forced the Speaker of the House, Cliff Rosenberger, to resign. So, corruption has been the norm in the State House, in the state government for the last 20 some years. And, maybe that's why Larry Householder thought he could get away with this time. And again, we've had one party rule here for the better part of the last 20 some years, absent a few years when we were in control as Democrats. But, it's been nothing but a series of scandals from Columbus, costing taxpayers money.
Yeah, just on the ECOT issue, as you know, ODE is not really under the governor. Is it your position that the governor had sufficient control over the state board such that he is responsible, that is Kasich, for ECOT, at least indirectly?
Look, the folks at ECOT paid off lots of Republican state legislators to look the other way. Right. And even Dave Yost was giving them auditing awards at a time when they were defrauding the state of Ohio. So you tell me if that's, whether John Kasich should be held responsible. I don't know. I wasn't in state government at the time, but it seems to me there should be a hell of a lot more accountability than for the massive amount of money that was stolen from Ohioans than actually happened.
Okay, and my second question, in your press conference on the street outside Rife, you included tax credits or tax expenditures in, like, it was the lion's share of your $1.something billion in public corruption. I mean, as you know, tax expenditures are used all over this country. It's a debate, how wise that is, a separate debate. Are you still including tax expenditures in your definition of public corruption?
Paul, can you give by tax expenditures, do you mean the millions of dollars in misused Medicaid dollars? Is that what you mean?
Tax credits.
Okay. So tax cuts for the wealthy, which is what we call
tax credits to businesses and that kind of thing. That you included that a couple of weeks ago in your press conference in your figure for public corruption.
Happy to take this one. I think that the focusing on the bigger narrative here that we're laying out through the numerous ways that the DeWine administration has been either incompetent or corrupt is that the middle class gets left holding the bag every single time, right? Whether it's a tax giveaway for the wealthy, misuse of public money in multiple state agencies, or abject corruption, which we see happening in the state house through multiple scandals over decades. The GOP playbook in this state is just sell working families down the river, right? Give tax breaks and tax handouts to big business, to well-connected people, and leave working families out. And I think whatever those examples are, we'll call them out. Whether it's tax breaks for the wealthy, or it is the paying off of public officials to pass a bailout for a coal plant in Indiana. I think
so business tax credits are still included in your definition. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
Business tax credits to companies to expand or to locate here, they are still included in your definition of public corruption.
If they're secured through bribery, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. We've got Seth Richardson up next with a question.
Everybody, so I know a lot of the focus today has been on the, oh, I'm sorry. I think I have, can you hear me any better? I'm sorry, I had my microphone and I didn't know.
Hey, Seth, thank you.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, I think a lot of the focus today has obviously been on the public records request and the, suture filing as well as the refiling. But is there anything in the records that you did receive that you thought was revelatory or anything like that that points to it? And I don't mean, I know you guys have gone over the redactions that you think point to stuff, but hard to prove a negative, right? So is there anything that is in there that you did receive that you thought was, pertinent for the public to know?
I think there's a couple things that we are going to be doing some follow-up on here in the next few weeks. I think the one that pops to the top of my mind the most is just how many letters Governor DeWine got from individuals telling them not to appoint Sam Randazzo to the PUCO board, that he's a bad actor and couldn't be trusted, and did it anyway. So that was probably the one that really stuck out to me the most. And it was not an insignificant amount, but I don't remember the number off the top of my head. So we can have Cameron follow up with you with that. That's probably number one for me.
I know it was in the ballpark of 700, but I don't have the number in front of me as well. We'll get that over certainly.
I'm referring to the records request I did differently than ODP, but I could tell you that a little bit of the information I received, which, sort of begged to ask more questions was, we saw communications going back from the PUCO to Mike DeWine's office, Laurel Dawson, and specifically in his office, who's running point down the House Bill 6 bill, where we saw that there was communication and direction from Sam Randazzo and his team on how to draft House Bill 6, how to get it through the legislature, I believe, if I recall correctly. But there was obviously communication between the governor's office, the PUCO, and the legislature on how to push this bill through. So it begs the question, how deep was Mike DeWine's involvement in drafting a bill? And if that's the case, how much did he know about sort of the ongoing outside activity that was leading to the bribery, that was leading to, all the stuff that resulted in the bill getting passed? And then, of course, when we moved on to the effort to repeal the bill on the ballot, how much were they involved there too? And Sam Randazzo, I don't think we knew at the time, when House Bill, obviously we didn't know at the time when the bill was being passed, how deep in First Energy's pocket Sam Randazzo was. But here he was drafting this legislation with the support and participation of the governor's office. So we really need to have, it sort of whetted our appetite for more information. And like I said, I applaud the ODP's effort to seek accountability and to get all the documents that they've requested.
In respect to time, everybody, we have two more questions coming up here. First is Marty with Cap Journal.
Thank you. Are you all, if this isn't resolved by then, are you all committed to pursuing this past the November election?
Absolutely. There's no timeline on accountability, as Rep. Crossman already said.
Thank
Follow
you.
up, Marty.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question, Josh Rultenberg. Thank you very much.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I guess this is for you, Liz. Look, this House Bill 6 scandal has been out there since July 2020. And we just got done this primary election on Tuesday, and we saw half the amount of Democrats come out compared to Republicans here in the early voting. So my question for you is, knowing that this has been out here for almost 2 years, are you concerned that even the voters in your own party aren't concerned enough about this House Bill 6 scandal at this point? And, just what are your thoughts on the voting numbers being so low, again, knowing that that's out there and you have the Roe decision being leaked and everything like that?
So kind of separating those two things out, like they spent almost $80 million in a Senate, the most destructive, horrible Senate primary in the country, breaking records. Like yeah, their turnout was high. I would like, that'd be wild if it wasn't. I think what we came out of Tuesday night with was an incredible ticket who's unified with a shared message, and didn't even dent, I think, even close to 5% of their spending to accomplish that. So coming through the primary, I'm not at all worried about their turnout versus our turnout as an indicator of the kind of where we get to in the general election excitement. What we saw is that, you know, Sherrod Brown endorsed two incredibly strong folks for our ticket with Tim Ryan and Nan Whaley. They both won resoundingly, and Sherrod Brown has won Ohio quite a few times. So we feel pretty confident and just excited about the ticket that's taking shape with Tim and Nan, with Jeff and Taylor. And I think going into the fall, to your point about this being out there since 2020, yeah, it's been out there, but I think in the scope of all the things that are on Ohio voters' minds, like the work to put this on the agenda as a discussion point about why there needs to be change in Columbus, hasn't happened from our side. And so that is what the party is committed to here, is being a true accountability operation for the entire corrupt GOP in Ohio. And it's why we've been focused on this since like early last year, and we'll keep it up.
Josh, if I can jump in and respond, I know you were at the press conference we held in the basement of the State House back in September, and I just want to recount to you a little bit of what happened after the press conference. And if you recall, there were some people that were, just visiting the State House that day, happened to be in the building when we were given the press conference. And one gentleman in particular, I recall, he and some others sat down and watched the entire press conference talk as we and Rep Weinstein and I discussed what was going on, our efforts to try to get documentation information, the need for transparency and accountability here, and how Ohioans keep having money taken out of their pockets because of this scandal. Okay. And after the press conference wrapped up, one gentleman in particular came up to me and he and I started talking. And he was a rural conservative voter from Ohio. And he told me he was outraged about what he heard, and that it was important for people in Ohio to hear what we had to say about this because it mattered to them. And he was actually so astounded by what he'd heard, he hadn't heard it yet, that he was actually going to go over to his state representative's office that very moment after that wrapped up to go talk to him about it. So to me, it highlights, you could call these election stunts or whatever, but these are important messages for people to know that their government is not working for them currently, that it can work for them. We can be a state of opportunity. We can be number one in this country for opportunity and create good paying jobs where people want to live in the state. And half of our college students don't leave the state of Ohio like they currently do and stay here because they view Ohio as a land of opportunity. But we can't be number one in opportunity while we continue to be number one in the country for corruption. And so it's important for people to know this. I think it doesn't matter if you live in rural Ohio or in urban Ohio, or if you're a Democrat or Republican. This is not a Republican versus Democrat issue. This is not a right versus left issue. This is a right versus wrong issue. It's the same thing. It was the same mantra I said when I went after Larry Householder and had him expelled from the Ohio House of Representatives, the first Ohio representative to be expelled since the Civil War. It was right versus wrong. It will always be that way. And we are going to continue to deliver the right versus wrong message, not just through the election, but beyond that. Ohio's deserve accountability.
Thank you, everybody. I know this has been a crazy busy week, as the chairwoman alluded to. I just want to quickly thank the chair and Rep Crossman and Taylor for taking some time off the campaign trail and answering your questions this morning, and for everybody's general interest.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
We'll have a full list of those records to everyone who would like them, as well as the lawsuit documents in your inboxes a bit later today. And we thank everybody for joining us this morning.